Thank you so much for that introduction. What a wonderful night it has been, and I'm so proud of this organization. If I were Trump, this would all be filled, but this is still huge. So thank you all for being here. Just a little side note, for those of you who are regular attendees, we've had nearly a 50% increase in attendance for each of the last 4 years to these dinners. So that's why the venue keeps changing. We keep outgrowing, and it's all because of you. So thank you. IWF was founded to mentor, support, and celebrate women who embrace conservative ideals that have improved the lives of so many, here and abroad, and have made this country great. To share, defend, and promote the underlying ideas and principles that make those outcomes possible. IWF's founders believed that America is our home, and a home to be proud of, a place of possibility where dreams come true. They admired our Constitution and the rule of law. They wanted our country to offer more and better opportunities to everyone by allowing the free market solutions that really work to function. And they understood that you foster human dignity, not just with rights, but with responsibilities. Today, IWF is making good on that mission, trying to correct misperception of the conservative brand and show that if you care about actual outcomes, not just utopian slogans, conservative principles are the key to a better, fairer, opportunity-rich, and compassionate society. The Woman of Valor Award is named after one of IWF's valorous founders, Barbara Olson. Barbara was a passionate advocate for America's founding principles. She never backed down from a fight, but also epitomized grace and humor. Facts and reason were always her weapons of choice. Ambassador Nikki Haley, who is also a passionate, fearless advocate for America and our founding principles, and who does so with facts and reason wrapped in grace and humor, is a perfect recipient of the Barbara K. Olson Woman of Valor Award. According to the identity politics crowd, a girl named Namrita Randhawa, if I'm pronouncing that right, born to immigrant Indian-American Sikh family, and definitely more than one 1,024th Indian, and I'm speaking as an actual Pocahontas descendant here, so I couldn't possibly rise to the highest level of leadership in our country. Indeed, when Nikki Haley began her first run as governor of South Carolina against 3 much better-known Republican opponents, no one gave her much of a chance. But this Sikh gave new meaning to seek and ye shall find, and found herself winning a primary, a runoff, and the general election, and then being re-elected 4 years later. Ambassador Haley was both the first female and the first minority governor of South Carolina. When she became our permanent representative to the United Nations, there were plenty of arguments that needed to be had. Ambassador Haley never backed down. She has defended America's interests confidently, clearly, and with steadfast moral compass, and without apology. What a refreshing change. Ambassador Haley hasn't just argued, she's gotten results. Where reform was possible, for instance, in UN peacekeeping negotiations and operations, she has led the way. Thanks to her leadership, the UN's UN peacekeeping efforts are now focused on fairness, compassion, respect, and importantly, actually achieving results. These changes were necessary to help ensure that UN resources, funded in large part by US taxpayers, are not misused, but actually flow to civilians in need of protection from conflict. In UN showdowns over everything from North Korean missiles and nuclear tests to the use of chemical weapons in Syria, Ambassador Haley stood up to Russia, China, Iran, and their cohorts. She has called out their propaganda. She is a clarion voice for decency and truth. Thanks to her leadership, the UN imposed the toughest sanctions yet on North Korea. Where the UN system impervious to reform, Ambassador Haley has led the way in efforts to minimize the harm. On her watch, the US pulled out of the Orwellian Human Rights Council. That did not mean retreating from America's role as a leader of the free world, but reclaiming the real meaning of the UN's founding principles, which Ambassador Haley did last year in hosting the first ever Security Council meeting dedicated entirely to the protection of human rights. Ambassador Haley has been a fierce defender of Israel, calling out the United Nations for its constant anti-Israel bias. Most of all, in a forum where 193 nations contend, she has been a graceful and unyielding champion of the United States of America. And unlike her immediate predecessor, Ambassador Haley did all this without asking for the unmasking of a single US citizen whose communications had been intercepted by our intelligence agencies. During her 6 years as governor of South Carolina, Nikki Haley oversaw an unemployment rate which hit a 15-year low. A net of 85,000 new jobs, we're not sure how many of them were dirty, but there were 85,000 new jobs, were created in South Carolina during her tenure. Governor Haley also proposed and then signed the most sweeping education reforms in decades that all students, regardless of where they live, have access to quality education. Ambassador Haley has been a strong, independent-minded leader who always stands up for what is right. And I'm sure I'm not alone in hoping, very much hoping, that this impressive record of success is just the beginning of all that she will accomplish. Ambassador Haley, it is my honor to present you with IWF's 2018 Women of Valor Award.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you so much for everyone that is here. It is truly a pleasure and an honor to be here to accept this award. I do a lot of public speaking in my current job, and I spend a lot of time working with a lot of fellas. So there's nothing I love more than to be in a room with a group of girlfriends. And the men who love them, of course. The Independent Women's Forum really is a special group I'm very, very grateful for. The IWF was founded on the revolutionary notion that not all women think alike. Imagine that. Women like Barbara Olson understood that some contemporary women's groups, who claim to speak for all women, don't. The truth is, the majority of women's groups don't speak for women who aren't liberals. That's just a fact. IWF was created to be a voice for millions of women who were like me. I am the mom of 2 amazing children. I'm the proud wife of a military man and combat veteran. I am a daughter who takes care of my elderly parents, who were amazing inspirations to me. I was also a governor who worked to bring jobs to South Carolina. And yes, Mike, you are so right. I tried to focus so much on the fact that it's not about college. Those technical schools, that was really true work. So God bless you for what you're doing, and let me help you. I want to help you do that. So in South Carolina, we fought hard to cut taxes and regulations, and we focused on education and preserving the rights for workers to join and to not join a labor union. And I'm an ambassador who's gone toe-to-toe with more than my share of autocrats and strong men to defend America's interests and values. I've always said, I wear heels. It's not a fashion statement. It's for ammunition. Some people think when I say that it's undiplomatic. But what I love is that it is connected with a lot of young women, because it shows we can be feminine and we can be tough. We actually saw that quote on some t-shirts for sale on the internet. But the part I love best about that is that the shirt came in women's sizes and men's sizes. The great thing about IWF is that it doesn't pretend that women being moms and wives and caretakers and professionals all at once is easy. It's not easy. We all know that. But the IWF is a great advocate for empowering women to live full lives on their own terms. Please help me thank the IWF for all of the work they do for women. I want to say a few words tonight about my experiences for the past 2 years as the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. Being at the United Nations has reminded me in many ways of my early days in state government in South Carolina. The UN Security Council, just like the South Carolina legislature, is something that I'm sure is familiar to a lot of people in this room. It's a club. It has its own set of rules, its own way of doing things, its own culture. There's a constant pressure to comply with this culture. And before you know it, the members of the club lose touch with why they're there and the people who put them there in the first place. Just like in South Carolina government, I came to the UN as an outsider. On top of that, I came to the United Nations at a time when the United States was being taken for granted and treated as a punching bag. There was a sit back and take it approach when other countries called us imperialists or oppressors. In the previous administration, these were self-inflicted wounds. When the Security Council attacked our ally Israel, we didn't stand up for our friend. We abstained. We even abstained on a Cuba resolution criticizing America. Can you imagine that? The Cuban dictatorship put forth an anti-American resolution, and America abstained. When it comes to the country I love so deeply, we just weren't going to take that anymore. In this role, I've enjoyed learning more and more about one of my predecessors, Jean Kirkpatrick. She also came to the United Nations at a time when the United States hadn't been leading and hadn't been standing up for itself. She and I had very similar first impressions. Remember that the United States is by far the UN's largest financial contributor. And yet, when both Ambassador Kirkpatrick and I arrived, there was no rhyme or reason on why we helped countries or how we helped countries. And there was no consequence when a country was openly anti-American. The United States was taken for granted and expected to do more. We looked the other way as countries disrespected us or used us for our money. Jean Kirkpatrick wouldn't stand for that. She used to warn ambassadors from countries that received a lot of U.S. aid but consistently voted against us at the UN. She let them know she did things differently than her predecessors. She said, quote, "We take the UN very seriously. We notice, we care, and we remember." I put it a little differently. When I first came to the UN, I told my colleagues that the United States was taking names of the countries that didn't have our back. The message was the same. We're not asking countries to always agree with us, but we are saying that we're worthy of respect, and we are being smarter about how we treat our friends and our opponents. I don't think it's just a coincidence that this message came from two conservative women at two very different times. Diplomats occasionally need to understand the consequences of their behavior. The United States makes such a generous contribution to the United Nations because we truly believe in the principles it is supposed to fight for. We believe in peacekeeping. We fund 25% of the UN peacekeeping budget. We believe in helping those most in need. We fund 35% of the World Food Program. We believe in helping those who have been displaced. We fund 42% of the UN Refugee Agency. But the United States is also a democracy. Unlike many of my colleagues at the UN who are not accountable to their own people, I am accountable to the American people. And when the UN falls short of its principles, we have a hard time making the case to American people that they're getting a good return on their investment. We have a legitimate expectation that our contributions not be used to finance a bloated international bureaucracy, not to give legitimacy to dictators, or to fund an anti-American debating society. We've made it our mission to show the American people value for their investment in the United Nations. And by value, I don't mean something transactional. I mean value in the broadest sense. Value in the advancement of principles of freedom, justice, the rule of law, and human rights. These are the values that have the potential to lift up all of humanity. So many of the places where these values are missing are places where people suffer. Particularly, women suffer. My work at the UN has taken me to refugee camps and conflict zones throughout the world. Whenever I travel to difficult settings, I always meet with a group of women. We purposely don't have men in the room. I find that women are more comfortable opening up in that way. These women are very aware of the situations in their countries. They know the problems. They know how best to solve them. I've been to refugee camps where women were watching their children grow up without education, without direction, and without hope. They are giving birth on dirt floors with nothing but a tarp over their heads. I've listened to their stories of torture and sexual violence, stories that are beyond imaginable. Women have talked about being gang raped, of having their babies ripped from their arms and thrown into fires. I've found myself hugging sobbing women who have experienced the kind of pain that no human being should ever experience. But here's the thing. The feminist left is very focused on sexism. Of course there is sexism, and we must never tolerate it. But there's also something else that tremendously disadvantages women that gets less attention, and that's the actions of governments and the effects of lawlessness. In place after place that I've worked on over the past 2 years, this phenomenon has struck me. In South Sudan, where rape is used as a weapon of war, it is obviously women who suffer the most. But it's not just there. In Syria, where the dictator uses chemical weapons against his own people, it is women and children who are the most victimized. In Venezuela, where a once well-off people have become impoverished by the disasters of socialism, it is women who are disproportionately left to care for children without medicine and feed their families without food. Time after time, government corruption, trampling of human rights, and the absence of freedom hurts women the most. Despite many problem spots in the world, there are also bright spots. Women are making progress, from India to South Korea, and even very slowly in parts of the Arab world. It's not as fast as it should be in some places, but it is happening. And then you think about our situation here in America. We're not perfect, but we have so much to be grateful for. And why have women achieved so much in America? It's because of the incredible freedoms that we have in this country. Freedom is what gives women such amazing opportunities. If we start to lose our freedoms, women will be the ones that suffer the most. I've always believed in the importance of encouraging people to find the power of their voices, to be leaders and to advocate for themselves and the things that they believe in. I'm proud to have been a part of helping the United States find her voice at the United Nations again. I'm even prouder that there are young women and young men out there who are being inspired to use the power of their voices, to stand up, to demand a better future for themselves and their families. The Independent Women's Forum has been an inspiration for so many American women and girls. I'm proud to be with you tonight. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you, and thank you so very much for this award. God bless. Thank you.